So we'll discuss tonight the issue of how much risk one has to take to save someone else. In other words, if you don't do anything, this person's in vadai sakana, is in definite danger. But by you going in and trying to help, you're putting yourself in suffix sakana, you're putting yourself in doubtful danger. Is there an obligation? Is it permitted? Is it commendable to risk one's own life to save someone else? So, and this question comes up in many areas, whether it's infectious diseases, a machamas rishus, a war that you don't necessarily have to go to. Obviously, you're putting yourself in different dangers, and some issues as well of organ transplants. But the issue is, are you obligated to put yourself at risk to save someone else? So there's a famous Yerushalmi they quote, the Kesef Mishnah in Hilchas Rotzeach. He quotes from the Hagoz Maiminis, who quotes from the Yerushalmi, and it's a discussion exactly where this Yerushalmi is, but most of the poskim and the Tziv say it's talking about the last Yerushalmi in the 8th parak in Trumas. So what's the Yerushalmi? Rabbi was caught and taken captive, and apparently if he did nothing he was going to be killed. So comes along Rav Yonason and said, what are we going to do? Bring out the tachrichin, bring out the shrouds. Well, I guess he's going to die and we'll have to bury him. And Rish Lakish, who in his previous life was a highway robber, he went down, says, I'm going to take out my gun and say, either we're both going to come out or we're both going to live. Or we're both going to die or we're both going to live. So we see from this Yerushalmi Rish Lakish that one is obligated to risk one's life to save someone else. However, is that so simple that the Yerushalmi says it? Number one is, it's a machlokas in the Yerushalmi. We mentioned it's a dispute, Rav Yonason and Rav Shimon ben Lakish. So, number one, who says we pass like Rish Lakish? Number two is, who says the fact that Rish Lakish went ahead and did it doesn't mean it was an absolute obligation. Maybe it was a minhag chasidus, a midas chasidus that he did. And that's how Rav Moshe writes and others. We find this, let's say, by the mitzvah as well, of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. According to Rav Moshe, one has an obligation to live in the land of Israel. And according to the Ram, one have one obligation? Does one have an obligation, Mitzvah to live in Eretz Yisrael? So Rav Moshe writes, based on different rayas, that there's no absolute obligation. There's no obligation like eating matzah that you have to do it. However, it's a mitzvah. If you do it, you definitely get a mitzvah min Torah, or like the mitzvah of tzitzis. You don't have to wear a four-cornered garment. If you wear a four-cornered garment, one gets a mitzvah min Torah. So, number one is the fact that Rav Shimon ben Lakish did it doesn't prove there's an obligation. It just shows that there's a mitzvah. And thirdly, the post can bring down that maybe there's no chiyuv at all in a normal case. Why is this case different? Because Rav Imi was a big Talmid Chacham, and the Sefer HaChasidim writes in different places that a Talmid Chacham has a din of a Rabbim, a Yochid Sharav Mitolibel, and therefore maybe that's why they went to get Ravimi, because apparently he was a bigger Talmud Chacham than Rish Lakish, and therefore they went to get Ravimi in order to try to save him. So the proof from the Yerushalmi isn't so simple, because number one, it's a machokas in the Yerushalmi, and the fact that Rish Lakish did it doesn't mean there was a chiyuv, maybe it was just a mitzvah to do. And as well as maybe because Ravimi was a Talmud Chacham, but a regular person, maybe that wouldn't be true. So the Sma points out in Choshen Mishpat, we don't paskin like this Kesef Mishnah. Number one, let's assume the Yerushalmi does say that, like the Kesef Mishnah says. The Kesef Mishnah calls him Yerushalmi, that we see that Ein Safek Motzi Midei Vadai, that the logic is that if you do nothing, you're only Safek. If you do nothing, he's definitely going to die. If you do something, you're only putting yourself in Safek. So the Kesef Mishnah calls Yerushalmi that you have obligation. If that's Yerushalmi, it's not that compelling. So the Sma points out, anyway, we don't paskin like this Yerushalmi. How do we know? Because he says, the Rambam, the Rif, the Rush don't quote it. The Machaber Ramah don't quote it. It's not quoted in the Shulchan Aruch, so we see we don't paskin that way. So even though that's not so simple, because the base Rabbi Yosef Kar writes himself in his introduction. Why did he write the Shulchan Aruch? I wrote the Shulchan Aruch because why write Shulchan Aruch? I already wrote the base Yosef. I wrote the Shulchan Aruch for those who want to chazer, review everything I said in the base Yosef, but the base Yosef is too long. Or it's for kids who can't understand the base Yosef. So if I want to know what the Machaber really holds, maybe I should be looking at the base Yosef, and the base Yosef does quite it. So it's not clear that the Sma is right, that we don't paskin like the Yerushalmi, but many assume, like the Sma anyway, that we don't paskin like the Yerushalmi. It's not that we don't paskin like the Yerushalmi. The question is, when there's a machokas Yerushalmi and Bavli, we always go with the Bavli, because the Bavli came afterwards. So if the Bavli came afterwards, so if there's Yerushalmi alone, we go with the Yerushalmi. If we have a Bavli that goes against the Yerushalmi, so then we'll go with the Bavli. So there are different Gemaras. There's a Gemara in Nida, which talks about Lashon Hara. They're not talking Lashon Hara, but they talk about you have to be, even though you're not allowed to makabel Lashon Hara, but you can't ignore it. If there's a call that a person is a thief, and you need a job in the cash register, you have to check into it. If there's a call there's a murderer, so you have to check into it. So the Gemara is the case where B'nai Golila, they went to Rav Tarfon to hide them. And he said, go hide yourself, what do you want from me? He said, because if I don't hide you, then you'll probably die. But if I do hide you, then I'm putting myself and my family in Safek Sakana. And the bottom line is Rav Tarfon didn't hide them. So we see from this Gemara that Rav Tarfon didn't want to risk his life to save someone else. So we see you don't have to. Maybe it's no proof. Maybe he felt these people weren't worthy of being saved. Maybe it was true. Maybe he checked into it and thought these people deserved to be put in jail or killed. So therefore maybe that's why he didn't do it. Or there's another Gemara in Sanhedrin. How do we know that someone's drowning in the water? You have to save them. They're attacked by robbers, attacked by animals. You have to save them. The Gemara quotes two psukim. Lo saman adam reyecha. Don't stand by idly when your friend's dying, and v'heshevasalo, and to return it. The mitzvah of returning a lost object. So the Gemara says, why do we need both psukim? If I only had one pasuk, again, it's a discussion which pasuk. But if I only had one pasuk, I know I have to go in and jump. I know I have to go and save them. I have to do it. But how do I know that if I can't swim myself, that I have to pay a lifeguard to do it? Kamash Malan, the other pasuk. So the Achronim asks, why say that? You could say a bigger chiddush. I need the second pasuk to teach me that one person tell me that if I'm known, of course I have an obligation to save someone else, but what if I'm putting myself in doubtful danger? That's what I need the pasuk for. And the fact the Gemara doesn't say that, the implications of the Bavli is that you're not obligated. And the third Gemara, famous Gemara about Metzia, about with Rabbi Akiva and Ben Petira, that lifeboat ethics, that they point out that there's only enough water for one of them, so what do you do when you're a couple of days away from civilization? So Ben Petira says you share the water. And Rabbi Akiva, because why? Because it's better, how could you stand by and let your fellow friend die? And Rabbi Akiva says, your life takes precedence. So the question is, what Ben Petira sounds good, it's a nice bumper sticker, it's a nice slogan on the car, but what's the pshat? What's the pshat? So the Gemara says that right. So what's the pshat to the so the Netziv points out, like, it's a nice bumper sticker, but how could it mean it makes no sense? Better you both die. So therefore, they point out, the Netziv points out that no, the case is you don't know for sure. You're not going to find more water. You're not going to reach civilization. The issue is, by me sharing the water, I'm putting myself in suffix sakana. So Ben Petira says you're obligated to put yourself in suffix sakana to save someone else. Comes along Rabbi Akiva, I would agree with you in principle, except I have a pasuk telling me the opposite. So we see from the Gemara in Bava Metzia that your life takes precedence over someone else's. And therefore, we see that the Bavli is cholik andu Yerushalmi. So some point out that what's the reason for the Yerushalmi? The Yerushalmi is because they ain't Safek Motzim in the Yivadai. So maybe the Yerushalmi would only say you're obligated to save someone else if I knew for sure I was able to save someone. And secondly, that the person's definitely going to die if you don't do anything. So that by itself isn't always clear. But the bottom line is the Yerushalmi says you have a chiyuv to do it, and the Bavli seems to imply there's no obligation. So the Meshech Chochmah says the Yerushalmi is against a pasuk in Chumash, and it's against the Mishnah in Makkas. The pasuk in Chumash is by Moshe Rabbeinu. God tells Moshe, I want you to go back to Mitzrayim and go save the Jewish people. And the people, the people want you dead, are no longer around. So the Meshech Chochmah points out, why is God telling Moshe the people who want you dead are no longer there? The implication is that if they were there, you wouldn't have to go. And this is Hatzalas Klal Yisrael. So we see that you don't even, the Yerushalmi said you have to put yourself in danger to save one other person. According to the Meshech Chochmah, the Torah tells us even to save Klal Yisrael, you don't have to save the Jewish people. And there's a Mishnah in Makkas which says that if you're in Ari Miklat and they need you, like Yoel ben Surya, you're the general, you don't leave. So the question is, why not? Pashas, because you're not allowed to put yourself in suffix sakana to save someone else. So that's the Meshech Chochmah. When Sameach want to bring a raya against the Yerushalmi that you're not even obligated when it's saving rove of Klal Yisrael or all of Klal Yisrael. We passing like the Bavli, but how do we answer up the question on the Yerushalmi? The Yerushalmi can't go against the pasuk in Chumash. That's because the pasuk really doesn't say that. If you look beforehand, that God was sending Moshe regardless. He just threw that in at the end. And what about the issue of the Arei Miklat? So that's what the Sri Eish writes. It's Xeris HaKasov. that there you're gonna die, there you're gonna be buried. But Echanami, if not for the Xeris HaKasov, you would do it. Or as in the one of the Svarim on Chumash, the Chavselas HaSharon, it's a big thick sefer on Chumash. So he brings down that we know Pikuach Nefesh is Dochi Isurim. Pikuach Nefesh supersedes Isurim, each by itself. However, Onshim still, but so therefore to eat treif, to Machal Shabbos, we permit it. But Onshim still apply. It's not a hector that Basin doesn't punish you. We never find anywhere that if someone's a doctor, he's murdered someone and he's going to put to death, but since he has the ability to save other people, we don't kill him. So therefore, we don't go with Risham isn't really going against the Pasuk and Chumash or in Mishnah. So we assume there's no obligation to risk one's life to save someone else. However, the Rav Chaim Salvation seemed to go with the Yerushalmi. It's because Rav Shachta quotes in the Nefesh Harav, the case in Vilna, where someone stole money from the church, and they said if the money is not returned, we're going to have pogroms and kill people. And this Ger Tzedek, who was in previous life as a Catholic, said, he asked the Vilna Gaon, could I go and tell them it was me? Maybe they'll have Rachmanit since I was once a guy. But the Vilna Gaon said, I don't know, let me think about it. Before the Gra got back to him, he went ahead and turned himself in, and he was killed. So he felt at least that he was obligated to go in. I mean, the Gra didn't answer. Or, as the case of Rav Chaim, there was a cholera epidemic, and he told everyone, you have to go out and help the people. So we see he felt like the Yerushalmi, that one is obligated to go in and risk one's life. And some people died, some people made it. And therefore, we see most assume not like Rav Chaim, that one is not obligated. In terms of Atzalas Klal Yisrael, most assume that there's an obligation to save Klal Yisrael, and perhaps even saving many, because then we could say, how long could you say my blood is redder than yours? And therefore, how long could you, because the reason why you don't give up your life is because you say, who says your blood is redder than someone else's? But in a case where you could see that your life perhaps is greater, maybe you could argue that Klal Yisrael or thousands of people is more valuable than you, and therefore is what to discuss. So the bottom line is there's no obligation to risk your life one-on-one, depending on the risk-reward, whether it's preferable or whether you're a chassid shota. And regarding Klal Yisrael, Rov Klal Yisrael, Kol Yisrael, so then there's much more room that we could say it's commendable that if one is willing to give up his life to save Klal Yisrael. How much risk a person can take while performing a mitzvah? In general, we know v'chai bahem v'lo sheyamus bahem. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to live by it and not die by it, and that's why save the big three, except for the big three. If someone puts a gun to you and says worship idols or murder that person or commit adultery, so there's a mitzvah of Kiddush Hashem. There is a mitzvah of sanctifying God's name by not committing the Aveira. But those are the exception to the rule. The rule is, for 610 mitzvahs, it's v'chai bahem. The Torah wants us to live. And that's why, if someone is sick on Shabbos, or he's stuck on a desert island, and the only way you can eat is not kosher, so the Torah says, v'chai bahem, lo yamus bahem, better to desecrate one Shabbos and keep many more. And we find throughout halacha literature, ushmartem li'ola nafshosechem, the pasuk that we have to go out of our way to take care of ourselves. So the question is, there's ordinary risk that people normally do. Walking across the street involves risk, or going outside, but we have to function. So you got to do the basic things of functioning, so that obviously that's built in and it's okay. But how much is too much? So the Gemara in Psachim, Daf Ches Amid Beis, raises the following question. We know on Pesach besides the mitzvah of eating matzah, there's a prohibition of eating chametz, not only eating chametz, but even owning chametz, ba'yira, ba'imatzah. And since eating chametz on Pesach is very severe, so the rabbis as well as the Torah, according to some, this is the prohibition for not eating. The prohibition of not owning chametz is to prevent one from eating. It's a biblical geder. But whether it's biblical or not, we find many mitzvahs we want to do to make sure that we don't have chametz and we don't end up eating chametz. So there's a mitzvah of bedikas chametz, of searching the night before Pesach. We go around searching for any chametz in the house. Ordinarily speaking, that is a mitzvah midrabanan, because as the Gemara says, betel ba'al masagi, that it's enough to nullify it. So we assume that the mitzvah bedikas chametz is a mitzvah midrabanan. So the Gemara entertains the question, what about doing a bedika in a place that is infested with wild animals, or I think the Gemara's example is snakes? Are you allowed to do a bedika? Because on one hand you have a mitzvah of bedikas chametz, on the other hand it's posing a risk to your life, or potential danger. So the Gemara teaches us the principle of shluchei mitzvah einan nizakin, that when you're involved in a performance of a mitzvah, you will have no harm. And therefore, one is permitted to do bedikas chametz. According to this, one would be permitted to do bedikas chametz in a place infested with snakes, because the assumption is that you'll be okay since you're involved in a mitzvah. However, the Gemara limits the scope of this heter, that only what the Gemara calls only if it's shchicha chazeka. If it's known that the snakes are always going to bite you, kill you, then of course you can't go. But in a case where it's uncommon, the snakes usually hang out in the corner on their own, they don't bother you. So in a case where it's shchicha chazeka, the Gemara says it's permitted to do bedikas chametz. So we see bedikas chametz is a mitzvah midrabanan, so we see it seems to apply even if it's a rabbinical mitzvah, and it seems to apply to all people involved with the mitzvah. So that's one Gemara. And there's a Gemara in Sota and Daf Chaf Aleph Amid Aleph 21a, the famous Gemara which takes our Gemara even further. Our Gemara has said that if you're involved in a mitzvah, so then if it's, as long as it's lo shchicha hazeka, you could do it, even though it might involve potential danger. The Gemara in Sota expands this protection. That what? That if a person does a mitzvah l'shma, that we know there the concept lo lishma, bo lishma, that even if you're not on the level of doing it for the right reason, start doing it anyway, and then it will come later. So the Gemara in Sota, Chav Aleph says, if you, the power of doing a mitzvah lishma, if you do a mitzvah lishma, so a regular mitzvah, and neutral, shalo lishma, so then only if it's not common danger. But if you do a mitzvah lishma, you're protected even from uncommon dangers. And the Gemara says, not only a mitzvah, but if one learns Torah lishma, he's protected from the dangers. And as the Beis Halevi explains, the greatness of Torah over other mitzvahs is because by the other mitzvahs you're only protected kol zman you're doing the mitzvah. When you're involved in the mitzvah protects you. But by Torah, even after you finish learning, it protects you. Why? Because there's a mitzvah of Yediyas HaTorah. Part of the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is to acquire knowledge, and therefore that you keep. So therefore, the Gemara says in Psachim Adaf Ches that as long as it's common occurrence, even though it's a potential danger, one is permitted to do bedikas chametz. However, it says, but if you do it with Shema, so then even if it's common danger, you'll be protected. In fact, perhaps that we could understand is a Gemara. There's a Gemara actually in Suvis on, I think it's Ayin Zayin Amabez, where the Gemara talks about staying away from contagious diseases. So, on one hand, the Gemara says to stay away from contagious diseases. On the other hand, the Gemara praises Reish Lakish, who went ahead and he didn't listen, and he taught Torah to people who had this contagious disease. And the Gemara calls it Balei Ratan. You should stay away from it. And yet the Gemara quotes in praise of Reish Lakish, who used to come in contact with them and teach them Torah. So the Rishonim asked, how could it be? How could Reish Lakish risk his life? The Gemara says one should not do it. So the Gemara, the answer he gives, the Ritva, based on the Gemara in Sota Chaval we just quoted, that anyone who learns Torah Lishma is protected even when they're not learning. So Reish Lakish felt he had nothing to fear, and therefore that's why he did it. And that could be interesting. That could be to understand the famous Yerushalmi, because Reish Lakish went in to save Ravimi. Maybe it's only because it was the same issue. He had nothing to fear because he was on that level. But the Ritva makes a very critical point here, that only if it's Lishma. That's why Reish Lakish was able to come in contact with the Balei Ratan, the infectious people. But you can't codify halacha based on exceptions to the rule. That's why perhaps we don't follow the Yerushalmi, because we don't, on the level of mitzvah Lishma and Torah Lishma. That's a whole separate issue in terms of the Gemara tells us in Ksuvis about everyone is obligated to move to Eretz Yisrael, and whoever doesn't want to go, it's that spouse that's responsible for breaking up the marriage. So let's say the person is unsuccessful, doesn't have a good job in America. He says, you know what, let me try my matzah somewhere else. I want to go to Israel for Parnasa. So that's Rav Shlomo Kluger raises whether the halacha would apply if you're not going to Eretz Yisrael for the sake of going for Eretz Yisrael. If you're going from other ulterior motives, so then maybe that halacha wouldn't apply. So either way, that's what we see here, that Reish Lakish had that special protection, and that's why over here. So, however, the Avnei Nezer, one of the great Hasidic Rebbeim, makes a very interesting observation. He says, all the examples brought in the response in the Tshuvas about someone who's in danger, they're going to be protected. It's the one who's in danger is choosing to do the mitzvah. He's the one at risk, and no one else can make that decision. And therefore, Rav Nezer says it's key that it's only the one who's actually doing it. However, the Rav Nezer says that if doctors of a patient who can't make their own decisions, or parents of a sick baby who need a bris milah done, they have no right to invoke this rule of shulchan mitzvah einon nezaken, and therefore, in fact, you have to go to the opposite. You have to go to the opposite and make sure you do everything to keep this person healthy. So it's only the one who, in fact, that's interesting. This Avnei Nezer is actually interesting. This is the same issue, the Macholkas and Malamed, Vahoel, Rav Tzvi David Hoffman. And Reb Moshe Feinstein. Reb Moshe holds no, that the next thing king gets it, but if Sri David happens, says no. It's only if they're not capable, then the doctor has to make the decision, and therefore there'd be a big practical difference in terms of kids, whether the parents have the right or not to make that decision. In fact, that's the Gemara, I believe, in Yevamos, Daf Yud Beis, where the Gemara talks about how only Shevet Levi did a bris in the midbar because there was some type of danger in the midbar. So the question is, if there's danger, how did Shevet Levi did it? And if Shevet Levi did it, why didn't everyone else do it? So what's the pshat? The pshat is there really wasn't any danger. I mean, it wasn't like a 50%, maybe it was a couple of percent, I don't know, 2-3% risk. However, Shevet Levi, they felt they were on the level of Amunah, they're going to go ahead and trust God and just go with it. And the others weren't on that level, so therefore they didn't go with it. So that's the question, doing a bris on your child, so whose mitzvah is it? Is it yours? Is it the child's? And therefore there's another issue which is relevant. This is a machokas aposkim, whether the parent has a right to take on risk for a child. In fact, it's a question today in Eretz Yisrael. Sderot, different places are dangerous to live. You bring your family out there, it's one thing for you to make that decision, but for you to make a decision for the child who's not old enough, so that's a discussion in the poskim, whether the parents, like Ramosha seems to next the kin makes a decision, or not like the Avnei Nezer and Sri David Hol say that's only the one who's taking the risk, they're the ones who have to make the decision.